This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret phrase is breakdancing.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Sarah Geddes. Sarah Geddes is a children's author, sixth grade language arts teacher, and a mom of two. Her first children's book, Henry and the Sneezing Dog, came out June 2023. In just a few weeks, her book, To the Moon, a JACOB and Trevor Adventure, will be available. And later this fall, you'll see a third book being released titled The Water Bear Astronaut. And the Water Bear Astronaut, that's a water bear, a tardigrade, right?
That is correct. And a lot of people don't know what tardigrades are, but my kids watch Wild Kratts. So I have learned what a tardigrade is in the last few years.
The folks who don't know what a tardigrade is, look it up. These are these microscopic. How big are they? They're really, really tiny.
Yeah, you can barely see them with the human eye, but they live in like moss and environments like moss and lichen, and they're super tiny, so I don't know if you can see them without a microscope.
But they're super hardy, right? They can live in like all these extreme environments. And so they took them up to space, right? To see how they would do.
They did. I actually didn't believe my 7-year-old. He told me a year or two ago about these tardigrades. And I realized really quickly just not to question him. He is smarter than I am when it comes to bugs and animals. But he started talking about them. He's like, yeah, they've been to space. I was like, what are you talking about? So I looked it up, and NASA really did send them up to space to see how they would fare.
Yeah.
And I kind of used that as a starting line for just a fun little story about a water bear going to space.
Oh, that's great.
Fulfilling his dreams. So I wrote it because my boys brought it to my attention. But I'd never heard of one before my kids brought it up.
Yeah. And what's the target for this children's book in terms of age? What would you say it's best in terms of the age market?
Yeah, so the Water Bear Astronaut, this one is still in the works. It's the first one that I'm doing as like self-publishing, so it's a little bit of a scary process for me.
Yeah.
It's definitely out of my wheelhouse. I would say in that some kids like 4 to 8 age is kind of a good one. It's hard because when you like post it on Amazon, they want you to choose like between 2 and 5 or 6 and 8. I was like, well, I'm kind of right in between those.
Yeah, I could see it, and I absolutely see it in a first, second grade classroom, being a hit, the teacher reading it to the class kind of thing. Oh, that'd be great. And then you've got a science lesson right there, How are these things related to us? Yes, they actually are. They're more closely related to bees, but they are. I had to look it up. I was like, where is a tardigrade kind of on the chart there? That is, I wish you luck on that one. And so this is your first foray into the self-pub world.
It is. So I used Austin McCulley. They kind of do like a hybrid program.
Yeah.
So I used them for the first 2 books, the one that's already out and the one that'll be out next month. And that just made me very comfortable. It's sort of like just getting my feet wet, trying to figure out how this whole publishing thing works. And I did have 1 or 2 companies offer to do the Water Bear Astronaut, but I decided just to give it a try with the self-publishing. So I still have like a company who's going to help me with illustrations, because as much as I wish I can draw, I can't draw worth a lick. But I haven't quite figured out. I'm still working on like the formatting and with the illustrations right now, and then I have to figure out the whole how to actually get everything formatted and released onto the websites. That is all new to me.
And then the marketing. I mean, that's the part that, I have so much trouble with. We've figured out how to produce a really high quality book. How do we let readers know we've got a really high quality book? Like, there is a flood of information and wonderful books out there for people to choose from. And so breaking through that is a real challenge. But if you've already got a couple out there, that makes a huge difference. The first one is so tough. Because you've got one product. And even if somebody's like, I absolutely loved Henry the Sneezing Dragon, and what else can I buy from you? And you're like, nothing. That's all. That's it. That's the one thing I've got. So, hopefully with To the Moon out there and now this new one, people can be like, oh yeah, I can be a repeat customer. So,
Yeah, and I feel more comfortable like signing up for like vendor type shows or
mhm.
setting up like book signings when you have more than one book to offer too.
Yes,
So
exactly.
um hopefully I'll have all three printed and ready to rock and roll before the holidays come.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, the people who are watching on YouTube are like, are they going to mention the costumes they're wearing? Because that's really weird. So folks on the podcast can't see, but on this show, we always come in our costumes. So tell everybody about the costume you chose to wear for the show.
Oh, well, I was influenced by what I was listening to this morning. So Come and Get Your Love On by Redbone. I don't know if you guys remember that song.
Mhm. Oh yeah,
But when it
absolutely.
comes on, the first thing that pops into my head is Chris Pratt. So it influenced my outfit. I have on just a casual, comfortable shirt, but I did choose a short leather jacket. I threw in some boots and a crossbody bag. And then, of course, I found my old school Walkman and headphones, threw those around my neck. So I am rocking some Star-Lord today.
Oh, I love it. So I wanted to match. And my wife is super into raccoons, like raccoon anything. She's got raccoon t-shirts. And so we happen to have this raccoon mask. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go Rocket Raccoon. So folks who are listening at home, this is not a very fancy raccoon costume. It does not have the, fur. It is just a plastic mask, but I've got this ridiculously oversized Nerf gun of my son's, and so you put them together, and it's Raccoon. I've got the vibe going on. So yes, you're listening to Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon talk about being teachers and writing books. Uh, but before we get into, lest we get into process, which is, something we're trying to avoid, although it sometimes is inevitable, I wanted to talk to you about what else is going on in your life that your readers can get to know about you. So, what has been going on this summer for you?
Yeah, we've been going on to some fun trips throughout the year. So I have the viewers out there who don't know me. I am married. I have a dog and I have two little boys. They're now 7 and 5. They had birthdays this summer. So I love to just go on trips with them. We do a couple of ones every single year. Like my parents have a place down in Captiva Island, so we've been down to Captiva Islands.
And where is Captive
Um,
Island?
it is like the southern tip of Florida.
Okay.
So you like flying to Fort Myers and you drive through Sanibel up to Captiva. It's very quiet. There's like no nightlife or anything like that, but it's perfect for, families.
Yeah.
There's a nice beach and the place that my parents have, like there's like a water slide and a pool and a beach, and that's really all you need with
That's
kids.
so great for the boys too. That's great.
Yeah. And then my big trip, I was really excited about this. So for my 41st birthday, my best friend, I met her when I was maybe 13. We met in 8th grade, and she's still my best friend to this day. But she lives down in Virginia with her family. So I flew down to Virginia and we went over to, have you ever heard of Chincoteague Islands?
No.
Okay,
Is
so
that
there
in is that in Virginia?
it's on like the eastern shore of Virginia. So there's a book that I remember reading when I was little called The Misty of Chincoteague. And it was really popular. And one of my students this year brought it up. And as soon as she brought it up, I think within like a day, I had convinced my best friend to book this trip with me. And we stayed in Chincoteague and we went kayaking over to the neighboring island called Assateague Island, and they have all wild ponies.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really cool. You can kayak up into like the seagrass, and you're not allowed to get out of your kayak because it's like national,
Yeah, preserve.
shoreline. But you can kayak up and sort of like dock your kayak, and these wild ponies were foaling. So this giant mare, like you could tell she's going to drop any day, was just munching on the seagrass, and she probably got within like 15 feet of us. It was awesome.
Yay.
So, we went kayaking and just kind of enjoyed being out there because it was one of those things on my bucket list. So I always have a couple fun trips like that. And then over the summer, we took the kids to Kings Island. and up
Which
to
was my
Mackinac
stomping
Island.
grounds when I was in, I went to, yeah, I lived in Cincinnati in high school.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes.
You were originally from Michigan, right?
Yes, born in Michigan, then moved to Illinois, then San Diego, California, and then high school in Cincinnati. So Kings Island, a lot of Kings Island.
Yeah, my kids love it. They're actually trying to convince my husband to take them down next weekend. So,
You can't have too much Kings Island, yeah. Except that
so
it can get expensive.
well, we were smart. We did season passes this year, and if
Oh,
you go
nice.
more than once, they pay for themselves.
Yeah.
So we did that. And they have like a really nice like Snoopy kids area.
Yes.
So lots of time there.
The lazy
Um,
river.
we took my kids up to do you camp at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we went up to the Pinery in Canada, just outside of Grand Bend. It's this fantastic campground area. It's right on Lake Huron. And we took them camping for a few days. There's like these sand dunes, and when you go to sleep, when the waves are like rolling in, it almost sounds like you have a sound machine on.
Yeah.
Like you
The
can
best
just hear
sleep
the
of your
waves
life.
rolling. And so we did some camping. We went up to Mackinac Island. We went up to Boyne City. So no giant trips, but lots of little ones, mostly that we could drive to.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. What a well, and a lot of great memories for the kids too. Like, oh yeah, you remember the time we went to that, that island. I mean, it's funny because the kids are going to be like, and the best thing was Kings Island. And you're like, you don't understand. This camping trip was really amazing. This was beautiful. And they're like, yeah, and the theme park stole everything.
Okay, so last year, I think it was last year, we decided to take them to Magic Kingdom down in Disney World. And we're like, they're young. We still want them to enjoy the magic of Disney World.
Oh
And I feel
yeah.
like we can only do the Magic Kingdom when they're really little, and then they'll start enjoying some of the other parks. By the end of the trip, I mean, we had a great time, but at the end of the trip, when we were talking to the kids, they're like, yeah, Mom, that was fun, but we like Kings Island better. So
Yeah.
laughed. We
Okay.
spent all the
No
money to
counting.
fly
Yeah, I
down
mean
there, stay.
that's great.
So we learned our lesson. Kings Island is what my
Yep.
kids prefer, so we just go there.
Oh, and they will like, I mean, because of the big roller coasters and everything, all the way through high school, they'll just be like,
Yes.
this is the coolest place. I mean, it changes, the experience changes certainly when you're in high school and you're like, it's also about like dating and looking at all the other people in a way when you're a kid, you're just like, this is just about rides, but like by the time I was in high school, that was where a lot of high schoolers in Cincinnati were just going to meet people. It was the mall of, yeah, so the summer mall was Kings Island. In the winter, you went to the mall. In the summer, you went to Kings Island. They are that, and that is a great age. But I am surprised that Magic Kingdom, because you were right, they're the perfect ages for Disneyland.
Oh, although I realize I don't think my kids love all the Disney characters the way I did growing up.
Yes.
It's changed a lot, and there's so many other cartoons out there that they were excited about it, but nothing like I was when I was
Yeah.
little. Like
Yeah.
Pluto is cool now, but not like
That's a good point.
idolized the
That's
way it
true.
was when I
Because,
was young.
like we watched Disney, like the animated shorts on network TV in the evening,
Mhm.
they don't have that kind of connection to Mickey, that. I'll bet you the Star Wars and Marvel stuff would be more their wheelhouse.
The Marvel, that's where we're at. All superheroes.
Yes. Oh, well, that they have excellent taste. I'm a comic book geek myself, so I'm like my
Love
son
it.
just got me some Fantastic Four comic books for that he found at an estate sale, and I'm like, yes, I will be taking a day to read Fantastic Four comics. Although I'm not sure when we are running out of time. You've got students back on the day after Labor Day as well, so school is coming up for you. How are you feeling getting ready for the year this year?
I actually was just going through my office today, like cleaning up all the paperwork, and I know I should. So work for me starts on Monday, but I've already started printing off my to-do list
Yep.
and making sure I can still log into everything, that passwords don't need updating. So I'm excited. As a teacher, I'm sure you know what it's like when you get new curriculum, and I had new curriculum a couple years in a row. So I feel very excited to have the same curriculum a second or third year in a row now. And so I feel like I can do a little bit more. So I'm excited to jump in, but also I can't believe that summer is coming to an end and I'm sending my kids back to school. So
Yes.
a little
So
bittersweet.
fast. Yeah, I mean the new curriculum, it's the double-edged sword. Like when you first get it, you're like, oh, there's some really cool stuff in here. This is going to be exciting. This is going to be new, but it's a ton of work. And then the second time you get to teach it, you get to do that refining and tweaking and oh, I've learned this one bombed and this one went better than I thought, and I can do a better job with this, and so yes, that second year with a curriculum is good. But yeah, it is nice to go into the year knowing I've been here before. I've
I
done
mean, I
this.
still have post-it notes all over my desk with ideas to make improvements.
Yep.
So I need to organize those post-it notes, at least on Monday. So I have a plan before my students begin in September.
Yes, we're going into the second year with a new curriculum as well. And I don't think we did it. We were not on the same page in my department as far as some of us were saying, hey, the way to do this, just to try it out, let's just do this with like complete 100% fidelity the first time. And we'll try it out. And then other folks were like really reluctant to leave their own stuff behind. And so we weren't on the same page. So one of the things I am really looking forward to is now people have, we can come to them and say, this really worked. You should, it's worth sacrificing this thing that you've loved, but this is really good. And hopefully we can, come together a little better with it. But I spent the summer reading. It's got a bunch of suggestions for independent reading. And so when you first get it, they're like, here are 20 novels to read. And you're like, yeah, I don't have time to do that during the school year. So this summer I read all these books so that I can then tell the students, this is what this one's about. This is why I think this would be perfect for you. You would really enjoy this one. And then, kids sitting next to them. Now, this other one, you like fantasy? There's a great fantasy novel in these selections. So it was a very good summer of, feeling like I was being really productive and working really hard by sitting around reading a bunch of great YA novels.
Well, that's the best part about being a language arts teacher.
Yep.
You're reading and really you're like, but I'm also doing work.
I'm working.
So,
Yeah. Well, I wish I got to do more of it during the year. Like I did this presentation at a writing conference where I was saying to, of all these professional authors, like how many of you have this little voice in your head where you're thinking, I need my high school English teacher to like this book. And I'm like, don't write for your high school English teacher. We're a terrible market. We don't get to read 9 months of the year. Right? We should not be who you are writing for.
oh my gosh, that's so true. I have a pile of books that I'm like, I have to get through these before September so that I can focus on my students in the school
Yeah.
year because I
Yep.
cannot read once the
Oh,
school
yeah.
year starts. My
Especially
focus
like
just
the
isn't where it
first
needs
three
to
weeks
be.
of September, there is no fun reading. And then once they've got their first essays in, there's no reading because then I'm
Because all
reading.
you're doing is grading.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, the reading time may quickly come to an end. I have been trying to make a habit of writing reviews, both as an author, like I just feel like that's a way to support, other authors and trying to write reviews, but also to bring them to my students to kind of make that a habit of theirs. Like, how do
Oh,
we
that's
get in the
awesome.
habit of seeing that we interact with authors' work? And this summer I was so bad. So I've got this like list of reviews to write so that I can then say to my students, hey, this thing that I keep saying is really important. I actually did it.
That's awesome though. It
Yeah,
is
well,
nice. Like whenever I give my kids an assignment, I try to do it myself
right.
just so that I can put myself in their shoes and see, like, this is what I struggled with the assignment. Now I can actually talk to my students about what they're going through with the process. So I
Yeah,
love
I
that you
mean,
do that.
and I know that your genre isn't your kids aren't your target market, but do you share openly with your kids about the fact that you're a writer and a published author and that kind of thing?
So last year I did. When I was starting the process, I didn't really want to until I physically saw that a book came out because
Yes.
I kind of didn't feel real to me. But last year we do that authors in April. And with so I could teach at an online public charter school. So what we do is we have like this calendar where every single day there's either somebody live being able to read to a student or there's a recording that's available. So what's really nice is my school had me do one of the author spotlights where I read my own book, but I also got to answer questions that the students turned in and had for me about being an author. So that was really nice. And that was maybe one of the first times that I kind of opened up to my students about what I'm doing outside of just being their language arts teacher. But now that I have like the second and third coming out, I think I'd be much more comfortable talking to the kids about the process because so many of my kids, talk about wanting to be able to write when they're older or do illustrations. And now I feel like I actually have a little bit more that I can share. I'm more comfortable with the process.
Well, and not just that. I think it's so important. It's so valuable for your students to say, oh, this is something that not only are you telling me to do this, but you do this. And
Mhm.
therefore, this is real in this other way. And, a lot of, I mean, again, I was asking folks at this presentation I was giving at this writing conference this summer, how many of you ever had any interaction with your teacher's writing? And no hands went up.
Really?
Nobody, yeah, nobody, because we're saying to these students, hey, you should write, but we're presenting it like, but I don't, and you look back through your own education, how many times did you read your teacher's writing other than, school material stuff? And that's
Yeah.
unfortunate. Like we should be, if this is important, we should be sharing that we are engaged in it with our students.
Mhm.
So I think that will, a lot of your kids will have a kind of, mind-opening, world-expanding view. Like you said this was real, but now it feels real. I could be a writer too. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, we do have like a narrative unit, and you always spend a couple weeks teaching how to deal with dialogue. And I actually feel like I could probably pull in some of my writing and give more examples of
Yeah.
how, you can't have more than one speaker in a paragraph. And this is how you show, the quotation marks are the dialogue, but italics is the thoughts that the characters are having, and go over some of the rules, but using my own writing more now that it's in print.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I understand that tension because we never want to feel like we're, selling our stuff to our kids. Like I'm not
yes.
marketing to my students, but like just showing them I am engaged with this as well. This
Mhm.
is and helping them see they are my writing peers and Shakespeare is their writing peer. Like rather than Shakespeare is this perfect writer and and I am trying to teach them Shakespeare, but they will never be Shakespeare. Like no, the kid sitting behind you might be Shakespeare. So we are all
Seriously.
peers in this room. And, and I think that's a really important part of creating that classroom feel of we're a room full of writers and you can bring that to them. So I would say lean into it. So when you are, besides the fact that we are about to start school and school pulls us away from our writing, what else has been pulling you away from your writing in terms of pop culture lately
Let's see, pop culture.
or the news,
Okay,
like
so
what,
I'm
yeah, what's
really
been coming
bad.
in?
I don't watch a lot of the news. But I do, my friends do try to keep me up to date. They like to send me like reels through like Instagram and,
Oh yeah.
Facebook, things like that. Um, so I've been pulled away a little bit by, I'm sure you've heard all of the stories about the Australian breakdancer Rachel Gunn. So it's been interesting. I guess, is it really bad to say I didn't know breakdancing was even in the
It
Olympics?
wasn't before. So
Okay, I was like, I
this was
didn't
its
know. And
first
so when
year,
my
which
friend
is
said
one
this
of
to
the
me, I was like,
dangers is people are going to go, this was so awful, and they're not going to take the sport seriously. And they're like wonderful, very talented athletes who are participating in this art form. And then there was Rachel Gunn.
I know, and my heart actually, like the very first reaction I have is like, oh, I'm sure she tried her best, and maybe we just don't know enough about breakdancing. But you watch all the videos, and they've definitely pulled me in. I find myself like watching a lot more clips of like the breakdancing that took place in the Paris Olympics, and more of the events. So I've watched. I'd say that's sort of what's been keeping me. Every time I sit down to open the computer, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just watch this reel real quick, or maybe I'll just
Yes.
see what this news story is about, what's happening now with the breakdancing and the Olympics and all the
And
feedback, I guess,
there
that
are
has
some
been
just
provided.
wonderful stories coming out of the Olympics about, the athletes and that, but that one was, yeah, it did feel like watching a train wreck. It was, it was a little bit of a mess. I did hear a very cynical theory, which may or may not be accurate. And, please, folks, don't hold me to this, but the theory is that Rachel Gunn, she's an anthropology professor. And so the theory is that she is now going to, write up a treatise about what this says about and the kind of interactions between I don't know athletics and whatever and the way she's been treated and all that really it's a stunt to write some anthropology book. So that could be the case, which is not to say she doesn't love breakdancing, but boy.
There's there's a lot of theories out there. So it is interesting to always see what's actually going to happen. down the road. Um,
I hope it
but
doesn't.
it was very eye-opening for me. When to learn that breakdancing was a thing in the Olympics, which
Right?
I blame myself for not knowing that. Um, but it was quite the story.
The the kangaroo or bunny move was my was
I
just
hate to
like,
say it, but like I was
oh
like, that's sort of my style of dancing. Like I would go out there and do the sprinkler.
yes, yes, and yet we
So
would not expect, hey, I should be given a gold medal for my sprinkler.
I mean, I don't know. My sprinkler is pretty good.
Yeah, I've never seen your sprinkler. Maybe it is on point, but my sprinkler is not getting me, to Paris. That's what is something like hobby that has been taking you away from your work lately?
Okay, so I've gotten into it feels like a very strange hobby to share. But out of the blue last year, 2023, I got into background acting, just like being an extra.
Oh, how
Um,
fun.
yes. So there are a couple of I mean, most of them are volunteer opportunities, but there are some paid gigs. You don't make very much. Pretty much covers my gas money to get there, but
Right.
it's really cool. So I've done um, just things locally in Michigan. Like there is a movie, I don't think it's out yet. It's called Without a Doubt. It's a Christian film just about this woman who has cancer and she ends up, renewing her vows with her husband. And so I got to be like, that was my very first one. I got to be a wedding guest in so when they're
Their
scanning the
vowel
crowd,
renewal service.
I'm just like one of the people in the crowd attending the wedding. And then I got to do, there was one called Fan of Mine, and I kind of think of it, I haven't seen the whole thing, so it's like more of a psychological thriller type thing. So there was a jazz bar scene we were in downtown Detroit and had this really cool old building. Um, and they had set up like a jazz band and they had just different people pretending that they were watching the
Yeah.
jazz band. So I got to be one of those people. But while we were down there, so this is an older Detroit building, which I don't know if people actually use this building. It's probably condemned. That's sort of the looks of it. What we didn't realize was happening is they were using smoke if they want to adjust the lighting while they're filming, they'll blow smoke, but then they take these screens and they'll use the screens to fan the smoke where they want it. And they'll be like, oh, we need more smoke over here, or there's too much smoke here. Can you fan it up? So it kind of adjusts the lighting of the film. And while they were doing that, what we didn't realize happened was somewhere in the building, it set off this smoke detector and the ambulance or the fire department showed up. We had no idea. We couldn't hear any of it because we were in the basement, some back room. It's like, thank goodness it wasn't a real fire and it was
Real
us
fire,
causing it
right?
because we would have been stuck down there. But I guess fire trucks showed up and there was a whole thing going on outside that we were unaware of. But yeah, I started doing I did a corporate shoot and I did a political campaign and just I got to be a cop in a new series called Street Legal Alabama that's going to be out on Tubi. So just lots of little
That's
fun
great.
roles.
So
Yeah.
how do you find out about these opportunities?
Yeah. So I connected with this woman through Facebook, which sounds very strange, very strange. I don't even know how we
Come
originally
meet me in a
connected.
basement in Detroit. It does sound fishy.
I know it does when I say it that way. But there's this really wonderful woman, Connie, and she is in charge of, she's a casting director. And so somehow we connected, and she just has this great group of people that she works with, and she will let us know, like, hey, there's a gig coming up. Here's the location. These are the roles I need to fill. She'll tell if it's paid or non-paid. And then she'll sort of assign roles if that's what we need to do, or if there's somebody who needs to speak, she'll kind of pick who's going to be best for that speaking scene. So I've gotten all my roles through her, and
Uh,
it's been really fun.
oh yeah, it's so great. I mean, people don't realize how, I'll see a crowd shot in a film and I'm like, all those people not only were giving up their time, but if any one of them at any point had looked at the camera, they would have had to cut and redo the whole thing. Like the more people are in the scene, the more complex it is, and yet it is a lot of fun. I was in I was an extra when I lived in San Diego when I was a kid in like a parade,
So
in
fun.
River Phoenix, and Sidney Poitier's Little Nikita was the name of the movie, and there's a Fourth of July parade at the beginning that's almost ancillary to the plot. But it just happens to kind of see how seemingly American these people are, and then you find out they're Russian spies, so they've got to have a Fourth of July
Ooh,
parade. So, they in the middle, it wasn't even in July. They were just like, we're going to do a Fourth of July parade scene. Bring your bikes, kids, kind of a thing. And
yeah.
you can like go, I was over there.
I know, it's so funny. It's like my parents are always like, well, where, can I see it? I was like, I don't even know how to show, like, I don't know how to show you half of the things that I do because it might be like a commercial that was on YouTube or I don't
Right.
even know how to find it. But it is, I think the coolest part, and you probably experienced this too, is just seeing how everyone in the industry, how many people have to come together to create a single scene and how one scene will probably be, it could be recorded once, but it's typically recorded like 6 times from all these different angles. And so you have to remember how you said something, or was the water bottle up to your mouth, or was it sitting on the table, and how were you grabbing it, and which way was the logo facing? Um, and it's really cool to see how everything works out. There's somebody holding the boom mic and somebody who's got the cameras, and then somebody else looking through another screen, and the producers in the back, and the director and the assistant director. And there's so much that goes into just like a single scene of any TV show or movie. And I think that's kind of pulled me in just to see how it all comes together. It's
Oh
really
yeah.
quite fun.
Yeah, I think, and this is true of any art form. When you are not engaged in the art form, it's easy to sit back and criticize, right? And go, oh, I don't understand this modern art painting, and therefore it just looks like they threw painting on a canvas and it's crummy, And when you see these professionals at work doing I mean, an incredibly complex job. For me, I just feel so much respect for any, even something that's ostensibly bad, like, okay,
Yeah.
this looks really amateur hour, and yet a bunch of pros put a lot of time and energy into this,
Yeah. I'm always impressed too by like, you don't think about, you're watching a movie, they had to memorize all of those lines.
Yeah,
And, I guess in my head, I sort of think it's easy, but it's not. I
no
had
way.
one episode, I had to learn six sentences. That was it. But do you know how easy it is to mess up 6 sentences?
Uh-huh. Yeah, how many
It's
different
really
variations? Yes.
easy. And I'm like, I am not made to be like the lead in any TV show. I don't have that skill. But it gives me a lot of respect
Yeah.
for, people who choose that for a career.
Well, and like you're talking about the person who's operating the boom mic, the person who's, and we don't even see all the stuff where they're editing and all the people who are involved in the digital production and all that. But it's a lot of professionals with an incredible amount of talent that have to, I was talking to an agent one time, a Hollywood agent for one of our novels, for the publishing company. And she said the way to understand the way Hollywood works is like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon where Wile E. Coyote's cloned himself and there's a whole bunch of him and he's trying to swing himself across this between two mesas, and if anybody loses and says no, then he holds up the sign and the whole thing falls apart, and it's this string of all these people who've got to make it work together. And so yeah, it is cool to see, to get to be involved in that and see, oh yeah, this is how it all gets made. So, and you've had 6 lines before, so do you have to join the union for that now? Once you get,
I I haven't. Um, this is just such like a small part-time thing for me, and half,
yeah,
the majority is non-paid, so I have not joined the union or anything like that. I mean, if I ever did more with it, I'd consider that, but
I
as of
think
right
you
now, it's just
have
like
to
this
after a
small
certain
little
point.
side hobby.
Well, and I think there's a point because I remember there was a thing where there's a certain number of lines in union productions where once you get to, I think it's, either a certain number of words or two distinct lines, then
Mhm.
you've got to be a union member. So once you do a union show, you'll note, like now I
Oh yeah.
notice, oh, the extras may go, ah, and they can't say anything else because they would have to union to join the union.
Yeah.
But yeah, that you may be getting to that place, which how fun would that be? Like that would be really really cool.
Yeah. I actually my it all started. last year, right at the end, like the very last day of school, it all started because we had a commercial in our garage. And I remember we got this letter in the mail, and it was, somebody saying, hey, I want to shoot this commercial, but I don't have a location for it. And here I am, like, bleeding heart. I'm like, oh, it's probably some college student. And if nobody believes in them, they're never going to get their dream. And my husband's like, we're not having somebody come film in our garage. It's probably someone trying to scope our house and they're going to burglarize us. And I was like, no. I bet it's just this kid who's just trying to like do a project for school. So I had reached out, and it ended up being a completely legit thing where scouts came out and, they ended up choosing our garage. But it was really cool because before I even got into doing any of the extra work, I got to see them use my backyard to film a commercial from start to finish. Yeah. And it was really neat to see how they even like took that space, and we're like, okay, this is what your garage looks like, but we're actually going to remove all the memorabilia, move all the kid toys out, and we're going to turn it into this. I'm like, why you would pick my garage
right
as, like, I have 2 kids, there's stuff everywhere. Like, why you would choose my garage over somebody else's, I don't know. But I'm so glad they did, because it kind of just opened my eyes to a new industry, all because of some little letter in the mail that I thought was some, starving college kid.
Yes. How many people would have gone, I'm just throwing this away. No way. What are you even thinking? That's great. Yes. Well, and it tells you something about everybody else's garages.
There you go.
They looked at yours and went, you think this is bad. This is the cleanest garage in town.
That would be terrifying, but maybe.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're going to go to our ad break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone. 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60 second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run 1 or 2 of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Bold Rising. Algo and their team of enforcers take on the underbelly of Geneva megacity before being sent on a mission to Mars, a cesspit of corporate exploitation. Suong, a child laborer, must turn the heart of Agent Algo while the fate of Mars, her friends, and her family hang in the balance. Cold Rising. Cold Rush novella, available now on Amazon. No one wants to live in a country ruled by wizards, unless the alternative is worse. Peter Watts, author of Blindside, says, a near-perfect blend of implacable horror, gallows humor, and ecological apocalypse. Nick Namadas, author of The Second Shooter, says, relentlessly radical and often hilarious. Cascade, Book 1 in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, by Rachel A. Rosen. Available now at bookshop.org, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and at bppress.ca.
I'm realizing I need to do a better job of telling folks this. People can't know what we refuse to share. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I've been doing a ton of work in my yard, and audiobooks have been my constant companions throughout. I know there are some people who say reading an audiobook doesn't count as reading. They are wrong. Reading with your ears requires some of the same skills as reading with your eyes, and some distinct skills, but it's still creating meaning from a text, and it counts. I have 5 of my books out in audiobook, on Audible and Amazon. The Convention of Fiends, Book 1, Don't Read This Book, and Book 2, You Were Warned. Corporate High School is narrated by Crystal Kay, and she did an amazing job. I narrated The Digital Storm with some cool voice changer software for some of the characters, so that sounds like a bit of an ensemble. And I recorded one of my collections of poetry, This Uneven Universe, as a gift for my wife Crystal, who wanted to be able to listen to it while driving. So if audiobooks are a way you enjoy reading, check those out. And if you like them, let me know, readers and reviewers. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Sarah Geddes. And Sarah, when you have been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
Okay, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I currently have a war raging with the squirrels in my backyard. So my daydreams, and now keep in mind, my office, there is a window where I have to look outside of my driveway, which is where I typically park my car. And over the past year, I've had to take my car in 3 times to take, these squirrels have been storing nuts in my wheel wells. And then they've also started to get into the wires and they've been chewing them. And one particular squirrel has taken over our garage and we cannot get him out. So he's my nemesis. So my daydreams, honestly, I think I've just been thinking about how can I win the war against the squirrels that live in my yard. I know that sounds crazy, but every time I go outside, I'm like, they've been near my car again. Are they in the garage? What are they destroying?
There is a whole like literary short story there about, just how far do your fantasies go and what do you actually end up doing? There's a memoir here, I think, in The War with the Squirrels.
There is. Okay, so I really don't know what it is, but when we first moved in, we moved into this house back in like 2011. And I don't think you have red squirrels out in Oregon.
No,
but,
we've got the gray guys.
Okay, so we've got like brown, gray, black, and red. For those of you who don't know, the red squirrels are insane. So it all started with this one red squirrel, and he lived in our garage. And so, of course, I always started with the kind-hearted. We need to use a live trap, and we need to remove him and drive him X amount of miles to wherever it is we can leave him. And so we tried the live traps. We tried the other kind of traps. We have put in the squirrel, it like emits the sound to get the squirrels out of there. It doesn't work. We have tried like the wire to like cover up the holes they come in, and then like pest control is like, oh, well, there's a certain foam that if you fill in the holes with this foam, the squirrels won't touch it. They hate it. I was like, awesome, we've got this. So I had my husband fill in all the holes. We used like 2 full tubes of this foam. Like there's no way these squirrels were getting back into our garage. Literally within hours, I've worked from home since 2011. So I look outside my kitchen window. I went out for like grab a cup of coffee or something, between students. And there is something, it looked like it was snowing across my driveway. And I was like, what in the world? And I look up, and I kid you not, this little squirrel had his little fist on his hip like this. And he stared at me, like staring me down through my kitchen window. And I was like, oh my gosh, he knows it was us. And he had torn through all the foam that we had stuffed into the holes to keep him out. And so it was all over our driveway. I sent a picture to my husband, and he was like, oh, great, all that hard work, and this squirrel's torn it out. That little squirrel stood on my roof and stared at me all day, all morning, all through my lunch break, all until dinner. And my husband, I think he left by like the time my husband got home. I was like, I kid you not, he was up there for like 8 hours with his hands on his hips, staring through the window like, I know what those humans did. And so I feel like ever since I've lived in this house, I've been waging a war with the squirrels, and it may turn into a children's story at some point.
Oh, yes. Yes, that is. I love the squirrel was just like, I showed you.
Yeah, I kid you not. I didn't even know they could stand like that. He had his little hands on his hips and stared in my window for hours. And I was like, oh my gosh. And now it's starting all over again with whatever squirrel's currently in my garage. And yeah, so I kind of daydream about how do I get rid of them, and how is this going to be turned into a children's story at some point?
Yes. Well, and the children's story, you all have to end up living peacefully together. And I don't know if you want, a bunch of pet squirrels who, came into your home by mocking you.
Well, I mean, if I could keep them from destroying my car, He
Yeah.
could be my
Yeah.
pet, but right
Not eating the
now, he's my
wiring.
arch nemesis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's they can get real expensive real fast. Those little
Yes, I
monsters.
am noticing this.
Oh,
And I laugh because I live across the street from this like 30-acre park. And I'll see people feeding squirrels. And I'm like, don't do it.
don't.
Don't do it. Like I'm
Yeah,
trying to keep them away from people. Don't draw them in.
you're just encouraging this behavior.
Yes.
Oh, that is, yes, that will be a great children's book, but I'm sorry you've got to deal with it in the meantime. Oh, that's funny. So I like to ask authors about kind of as a Rorschach test, if you were in this other universe, if you had this other, world to live in, who would be the Sarah Geddes of this universe? So for you, if you were in the Marvel or DC universe, if you had a chance to have superpowers, who would Sarah Geddes the superhero be in the Marvel or DC universe?
All right. Well, I will say that any of my previous students would know my answer to this. We talk about superheroes every year. Hands down, I would want teleportation. I mean, you can go anywhere in a blink of an eye. So my kids and I want to go to the beach for the afternoon. Boom, you're at the beach. You want to travel to Paris and get a baguette. You can do it. You want to go hiking in New Zealand. You're there in like 2 seconds. So I definitely teleportation, I think would definitely be my superpower. What would you go with?
Oh, absolutely. I've told my students the same thing. So if I changed it up now, my students would be able to call me out on it and say, "You've always said teleportation." But I
Yeah.
think it's because you love to travel. Like travelers like us are like, "Oh, teleportation," because the least convenient part of, traveling is the getting there. Once you're there, it's
And you
great.
have to pack, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have to pack. I could just
Yeah.
come home and grab anything I needed whenever I needed it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you teach online. Are your students, do they tend to be pretty local or are they all over the place?
So with my school, my kids have to live in the state of Michigan. They have to have a residence in the state of Michigan. Not to say that some of them don't travel throughout the school
Right.
year. So like I do have last year I had a student, who traveled to different countries with his parents and he just knew he would be home for state testing and he was, met with me at all of our scheduled times. I've had kids, travel by RV, things like that.
Yeah.
But they have to have a residence in the state of Michigan. So they're all over the state. But I'm in like the Rochester area, which is north of Detroit.
Yeah. See, a lot of I teach in a small town,
Mhm.
and a lot of my students have not traveled. And trying to encourage them see the world. The world is so much bigger than, our small town. We have kids, we're 20 minutes from the ocean, and yet we have kids, well, a little further. And we have kids who've never been to the beach. And so,
In fact,
encouraging people or, go to Portland, and they've heard stories about the big city being scary. And it's like, no, go up to, hang out in Portland, not just for the event, not just, because you're going to go to the basketball game or the concert, but like go see downtown, see the world. That kind of travel opens your eyes to so much. So yeah, if I could teleport, I would be all over the place. That would be great.
and if you could teleport, I've got to say, now granted, I'd probably still choose to work with kids in some way or another. But you also wouldn't really need a job. Your job could be like, hey, do you need me to deliver that mail? I can have it there in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
$100.
Yes,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like it would be a really cool job too. You could
Yeah.
just
Well, and it's good that but neither of us went immediately to criminality. Like it's not like, yes, I could also teleport into the bank vault and then teleport back out. But no, I could deliver a package for you because that is the more generous kind thing to do.
okay. I don't know the right way to explain it, but I did always tell my kids that if I could teleport, if possible, I would have this ability to like when you're teleporting, you could choose to like not like invisible, but like sort of that transparency mode, and you could hover for short periods of time. So let's just pretend there was a bad guy. You could go into transparency mode. They couldn't really see you, but you could overhear all the conversations and then teleport out to tell the police.
Yes, you could also
So
do
I've
the
had all
thing
those
where
conversations about like
my
help.
model for transparency is Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler. You could do the thing where you teleport in, and if you can teleport quickly enough, you're falling each time, but you're teleport, and so you could seem to be essentially, flying as you bamf along. And yeah, you could teleport in behind somebody, you could teleport in near the ceiling. So yeah, there'd be lots of other ways that you could end up using this power.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest one is, instead of I need to fight crime, I'd be like, no, I need vacation.
I would. I
And
would too. But
there's
like,
another
how
place in the
easy
world
would
I
it
haven't
be?
seen.
Like, I could, especially with my job too, if like a student was having trouble with something, I'd be like, hold on, I'll be at your house in 2 seconds. And I
Yeah.
could just like pop over there, help them
Yep.
with the paper, and
Bamf.
pop back to
Yep.
my office. It would
Oh
be
yeah,
great.
it would be so great. Now, Kurt Wagner, when he teleports, has to go through essentially like a hell dimension, and then
No,
yeah.
I don't
So
want
I don't
that.
want that. I don't want to have to go like pop into hell and then pop into this new place. That does not sound pleasant to me at all.
Mm-mm.
But oh yes, that would be great. So where would be your first place that you would want to teleport to?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Maybe like to go visit a friend, or there is actually, so there's one place in New Zealand on the southern island that I went hiking to one time. For the life of me, I cannot remember the name. It's somewhere near like the Emerald Lakes. And we had to hike there. So it's not like I can just quickly pop over and visit
Yeah.
it again. I would go there. So it's right by, there's like Devil's Staircase and the Emerald Lakes. And then you still got to keep hiking for hours.
Well, and not
But
just
there's
that.
some place
Glad to
out in the
get to
middle
New
of
Zealand.
nowhere that I loved
Like,
so much. I would go back there, but it would be a
yes.
lot easier to
I mean,
teleport
it's the
than go on another big
trans-Pacific flight
hiking.
that I would want to avoid. That's a long time in the air. I was just in
No.
Southeast Asia this last spring,
Were you
and that
really?
was the longest flight I've ever had. Flying from, they ended up flying me from Portland to Minneapolis, which is where I met up with my brother and my dad, and then
Yeah.
from Minneapolis to Seoul, Korea. And
Oh my
that
gosh, how
flight,
long of a
I
trip
I
is
am
that?
apparently old enough that sitting that long, I was like, my knees hurt. Like, that's a long time to sit.
No, I don't think
Yeah.
I don't know if I have it in me. I do want to take my kids, like to England and Italy and places like that. But right now I'm like, oh, they're so little. And my youngest one's always like, can we just go back to the room? Or I
Yeah.
just want to go home. So I haven't taken them yet. But man, if
Well,
I
and
could teleport and take my
I
kids
would say
there,
do wait. Like wait till they're ready to take it all in. Wait till they've gone through their I took my son to Egypt and Greece and Italy
oh,
when he was
fantastic.
old enough that he had, you know, I know he will not remember all of it, but he was old enough that he'd read, novels that were set there, and he'd studied, Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology and that kind of stuff in school. And so it was like, oh, this connects,
Oh
and
yeah,
that was
that's
a
awesome.
really magical kind of experience for him. But yeah, there is good rationale for waiting. I had some cousins who like took their kids when they were like 5 to Europe, and I was like, they're not going to remember any of this. This
No, and
is,
it's so expensive to fly now.
oh
So
yeah.
maybe I would take, if I could teleport with somebody, like if I was holding my kids' hands and they could come with me, maybe I would go to England and take my kids over to like the Cotswolds, and they could like see some of the cool like castles and things like
Oh
that
yeah.
up. That'd be pretty fun.
Yes. Well, and the nice thing is, if you could teleport, you could go, is it too soon for them to see this? I don't know. We'll take them and then we'll take them again and then we'll.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be. So I've been saying to my son since he was basically an infant that I really need him to invent a teleporter. He hasn't gotten on it yet, but I'm working, I'm leaning on him to say, you've got to crack that and we need a teleportation device of some kind. So
That's always a big debate. If you could be a famous inventor to like invent a machine that made teleportation, like a little belt or something that you press a button, or just have teleportation, which one would you do? I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one I would do. I mean,
which one you do in terms of
like
be
if I
the
could be
inventor?
that, yeah, would I be the famous inventor who could make any of that stuff? Or would I rather just have the superpower?
Yeah. Oh,
Kind of a hard decision because I
that
do
is an
think about that too.
interesting. I mean, being the inventor carries with it all of this responsibility. And not only is it, oh, now you've got to run a company, but also like now you've got if this causes all kinds of trouble in the world, it's your fault.
Or if it falls into the wrong hands. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Whereas if you're just, I'm the person who teleports and I choose not to rob the bank and instead deliver the package. Okay, that's fine. Yes.
I think about Iron Man a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like the partner turns out to be the bad guy. So sorry, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Iron Man, but I do think about that. So
Yeah.
I do think it would be awesome to be an inventor, but there's way too much pressure.
Yeah, well, and I was a big Iron Man collector of the comics, and a lot of the stuff was the technology falls into the wrong hands, and what are you going to do about it? And
Hmm.
in the real world, you might not be able to do anything. Like you just have to live with the consequences. What was the great moment in Oppenheimer, where you see him kind of realize. Have you seen that one yet? Have you seen
Mm-mm.
Oppenheimer? Highly recommend. It is. I mean, that's not a spoiler for anybody. It's an amazing film, but it is. There you kind of see the moment he realizes all this ambition. I'm going to do this really cool thing, and I'm going to end the war, and I'm going to, and then what have I done? You know, you
Yeah.
can't put that genie back in the bottle, and yeah, it's yeah. So I think I would go with the superpower, but maybe that's selfish of me. Maybe that's anti-heroic to prefer to be the superhero rather than the inventor.
I know it's definitely it's a debate I have. I think I brought it up with my kids a couple of times.
Yeah, that would be a good discussion. I like that. What's something that you want listeners to know about in terms of your career? I know you've got the book coming out right now. What's something you want to get the word out about?
You actually touched on it a little bit earlier when you were talking about what you do with your students with providing reviews to authors. And I love that you do that and then like demonstrate it to your kids. I think the biggest thing I would tell people is that reviews make such a big difference. So if you love a book or you love a podcast, to leave a review. There's so many people who are just starting out, and there's a lot of indie authors out there. Your podcast, let's see, you've been doing it for almost 2 years.
Yeah, this is our 90th episode.
So, just being able to do something as simple as a thumbs up or a 5 star or writing like one sentence about what you liked or took away from an episode or a book, that is so powerful to the person who wrote that book or is leading that podcast. And I don't think I realized it until I've been on this side of things.
Yes.
And I've made a huge, kind of like I make a point that when I'm reading a book to provide that review or those stars on whether it's Amazon or Goodreads or whatever I can. And just kind of knowing that you might think, oh, you're just one person and you've only, you might not think that your voice matters, but it really does, especially to, people who are just starting out. They look at those reviews and they read them and it means something.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's wild to me, and I think this is a function of being on this side of it. Like now we understand this, but you'll have friends who say, how can I help you? Or these are your dear friends. They want to be helpful, and I know these people would drop everything and give up an entire Saturday to help me move. If I said, "Hey, I need to move." But giving that review, which would take them a whole, minute and a half, they can't be bothered. And it's just because, and then I have to give them some grace and say, oh yeah, they don't understand how important that is. But it's like,
Mhm.
I should do a thing where I say to everybody, hey, I'm going to move and I'm going to buy you pizza and I'm going to buy you beer. Come over to my house. And then when they all get over here, I say, no, we're actually not moving. I just need you to spend 5 minutes eating some pizza and drinking some beer and writing me reviews, and then you get to go home.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
see,
so funny. So a review party. You want to have a review party. That sounds
right, we're having a
fantastic.
review party. I'm going to get 50 people over here. Just write reviews before you go. But yeah, I think, those of us who are in understand they make a huge difference. So yes, absolutely agree. Speaking of the things you will be reviewing, what is it? What's in your TBR pile? What are you looking forward to?
Um, let's see. Well, everything. Right now I'm reading a Tessa Bailey book. So like I think even right before I met with you, I was like, wait, let me just finish this chapter
Yeah.
before I start sitting down with Benjamin. Okay, so there's a couple of books that I can't wait to get my hands on. The Fourth Wing series by Rebecca Yarros. I know there's another book coming out, and I'm one of those nerds that it's like, okay, if I know it's coming out in like February 2020, I will take out my phone and put a reminder for the
Yes.
date that I think it's supposed to come out so I can remember to order it or pre-order it when I think it'll be on Amazon or something. So I really want to read the Fourth Wing series, whatever that new book is coming out. But I feel like it's been so long between books that I have to go back and reread them
Hmm.
before before I get to the new one.
If you like that series, check out Dawn Calamity by Amanda Cherry. It is set in it's kind of a steampunk airship
Okay.
adventure with romance and I mean it and
Wait,
a lot of
what's it about?
action.
Like, what's the summary?
So the I don't want to give too much away. I'm afraid I'll spoil it. But you find this out in the first few pages. The protagonist is the second daughter of the queen, and so she's kind of the spare, she's not the heir to the throne, and she is sent off on this diplomatic mission in this rickety old airship in this universe where that's how the military is conducting they're in this kind of tentative peace after a long, long time of conflict, and she's being sent in this airship to go over and on this diplomatic mission, and the airship goes down. And so now it's, if we don't get back, then it looks like we were shot down and the war could restart, and she's got to
Oh,
rescue all these people.
yeah.
And the one of the things that's so absolutely delightful about the book is the protagonist is incredibly competent. Like she's tough, she's smart, she's sick of, always being treated like the spare, and she at the same time wants to prove herself. And yet there's a woman on the crew that she's got a crush on. And whenever she's around her, she falls apart. It is adorable where she's like, I just, like she can't hardly talk. She's just, and she can't understand that the other woman has a crush on her too, but we as the readers can totally see it. It's beautifully written in that way where you're like, but she likes you. Just say something, and she can't, And so it's just this delightful romance in the midst of this total action story. So yeah, check that one out.
I
It's
will have to.
really,
I'm gonna
really
put.
good.
I have a list going. I was actually keeping myself from like, I need to grab a pen and paper to write that.
Yes, yes.
Putting
Dawn
it on my
Calamity by
list.
Amanda Cherry. It's really fun. Yeah, and I'm like folks who like Fourth Wing, this would be right
Yeah.
up your alley.
Now, did you ever read like Court of Thorns and Roses?
I have not, and I've got a friend who's been pushing them on me, so that I need to check those out.
Okay, so I ended up loving it. I don't know why I took so long to read it. I think I'd seen people reading it and people mentioned it, but I was like, you know what? Picked up the first book and I was hooked.
Yep.
At the very beginning kind of gave me like the Hunger Game vibes where, the girl was going out across the wall to hunt for food for her family. And then of course it's, there's fairies and a whole nother world out there. So I ended up devouring the Court of Thrones books. And my friends are telling me if I love that, then I have to read the other two series. So everyone suggested the Throne of Glass series.
Oh yes, I have read those. Yes.
And I actually heard that it's also more young adults. So
Right.
I don't know
Yep.
if it's like high school level or not. I haven't really looked at what they're about, but
I think I'm if I remember correctly, it is YA, but I totally devoured them. They were a ton of fun.
and then there's Crescent City too. And I heard that there's all the Crescent City series.
I don't know that.
I know that there's a tiny bit of crossover with Court of Thorns and Roses. I was asking my friend who was reading it, like the first book's like 800 pages. And I kept being like, well, is it the same characters? And she's like, no, not at all. But there's one part in the book where like Reese from the Court of Thorns and Roses like crosses over with the characters in her book. And I was like, well, that's it. If there's even one scene where they cross over, I obviously have to read
Which
the
is
whole
brilliant
series.
on Sarah Mass's part to
Yeah,
say now all those readers have to make the
I do.
crossover because they're like if I need more of this, I guess I have to read this other series. They are related. Stephen King will do that where I'll have one character who shows up in another book, and so the completists are like, if I want to get the full story of what's going on behind the scenes, I
You
guess I have to
have to
read
read it.
everything.
Except with the school year starting, I have to time when I start these series. Or right now, instead of like a book, I'm trying to get it on audio. Not all
Oh
of
yeah.
them are on audiobook at my library, but audiobook so that then when I'm like doing dishes or doing laundry, I can listen to the book while still actually being productive in the house. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure my husband would tell you I turn into a zombie and I have a book and he's like, Sarah, I can be talking to you and literally there's nothing.
Yes.
He's like, I told you there was dinners ready like 6 times in a row, zero response.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't
And my
answer
wife
any.
just knows. She's like, I know, she's like, I'm like, I'm so sorry I didn't hear you when you said whatever. And she's like, I understand you were reading a book. You cannot hear me.
No,
I'm in
and
another
I literally
universe.
will
Sorry.
put my book on top of like a load of laundry and slowly walk up the steps so I can keep reading as I'm doing it. I was like, I'm slightly obsessed. There is a reason I teach language arts.
Yes.
I just love it.
Yeah, no, I love audiobooks. That's my, gardening, like yes, the house maintenance projects, the dishes and that kind of stuff, but also like I'll create house projects because I'm like, I know I'm going to be listening to this fantasy series that's 56 hours long. And so what can I guess I'm going to reorganize the garage.
I volunteer to mow the lawn a lot when I'm listening to an audiobook.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure my husband's figured it out. Like, Sarah, the lawn needs one. I'm like, cool, great. I'll put in my audiobook. I'm ready to go. I mean, it gets me away from the other chores and I get to listen to a book while,
Yes.
as
It is
helping.
tougher with the kids because they're like, Mom, a little, can you hear us? And you're like, no, I'm sorry. I'm in another
No,
universe right now.
I can't. Now, the good thing is, like, my kids love to be read to, but I went on a road, I think I was driving back from up north Michigan, and it was late at night. I don't do a lot of night trips with my kids, but I was like, well, I'll try like an audiobook because I don't want them on screens that late at
Yeah.
night. It was just so bright in the car. And now, of course, my now 5-year-old is like, didn't like it at all. But my 7-year-old did not want me to turn this book off. I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
haven't, now I just need to find books that we'll both really love, and I'll have somebody else who can listen to those audiobooks with me and I won't feel so guilty.
Yes, yes. Well, and I mean, the great thing for at their age is like they can learn to multitask. So they can be like, oh yeah, I'm coloring and listening to the book. I'm
Yes.
doing this other thing. I'm playing Legos. Legos are great for you should get them into the Lego and audiobook combo. That's like great for your brain.
7-year-old was doing Legos all day today.
Uh, I highly recommend. I mean, I'm biased because I'm an author who writes books that get turned into audiobooks, and my wife literally owns a Lego store. So I want everybody to be doing Legos and audiobooks all the time.
I did not know your wife had a Lego store, but we're
Isn't that cool?
actually
Yes, yeah,
my
it's a pretty great gig.
oh my gosh. My mom actually today just, was telling my 7-year-old, like, I'd like to go get you a Lego. What would you like? He's like, no, no, no. I want to go with you to the store. Like, very when he wants to go and he wants to like look at everything that's out there and pick it out. I was like, yeah, you can't just buy him one.
Yeah.
You have to let him go with you because it is a whole thing.
Well, and he's wise because they've broadened so much now. It used to be, there were the city sets, the castle sets, the space sets when we were kids. That was basically it, And now there's floral sets for adults that are very much, hey, I'm going to build this bouquet of flowers, and they've really broadened out, all the different kinds. So yeah, there's a lot of ways for a grandparent to go wrong. So
I know.
wise to
I
take him
mean,
with.
we did well, I say he did a Star Wars ship today, but then he also did, there's this one that like you can choose like one of 4 different animals and you get to choose what you create.
Yes.
I was never a big Legos person, but he made some sort of like octopus or something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, when she asked me, I was like, I don't even know. The child likes everything. Like I can't tell you he's into like just Star Wars Legos or just, superheroes. So it's like he will just find whatever one he thinks is cool, and that's it.
Well, when my son was little, we realized like when it comes to toys, Legos are the absolute best investment. Everything else was, 3 weeks later, he's done with it. He's never going to play with that thing again. And the stick that he found in the woods is still more valuable than the toy that we spent $30 on. But Legos were the one thing where, yeah, 3 weeks later, he's not into it. And then 6 weeks later, he's back to it. And the Legos never lose their value. They're never, and
Now, does he tear his Legos down or does he leave them all put together?
well, he's in college now, but this is funny. He's in college, and he and his roommate are building a Lego set in their own
I
new
love it.
apartment. Yeah, I mean, it never has gone away, but we were just talking about all the Legos in his room here at the house. And he's like, absolutely, those are to be passed on to my children. And like, he knows,
I love it.
because my parents held on to all mine and he got all
Yeah.
those. So this is now a tradition. And they're made of plastic and will last for 10,000 years. So it's fine.
There's a really cool one. It's Bowser. It's for like
Oh, yes.
$88.
Yep.
That looks so cool. And I cannot wait. My youngest child, who's 5, loves Bowser. And my oldest one loves to do Lego sets. I'm like, I cannot wait until you are ready to tackle that one.
Yep.
I will buy it for you because it looks awesome.
Audiobook and Bowser. That's the family
Done.
project. Yep. That's so great. Well, you're welcome, Lego, for advertising for you for free.
Yes.
Um, so I wanted to ask you, who else do you think would be a good recommendation for somebody I should have on this show?
Yeah, so okay, I don't have a lot of friends who write. Um, but I connected with this one woman. Her name's Fiona Lowry. She's a Scottish children's author.
Cool.
And I've always had just really positive interactions. We've communicated a lot virtually. Obviously, she's in Scotland,
Yeah.
but through like email. And she also used Austin Macaulay for one of her first books. And I hadn't known anybody else who had. So we started talking about our experiences. Um, we shared each other's books with each other. We've kind of talked about how we've branched out to try other things as well, like how she found her own illustrator, or, how I'm going to, my third book, I want to try self-publishing. And it's really nice to have somebody else out there willing to collaborate or, talk about the struggles of being on this side of everything. Um, she has the cutest book called Meeting Pip. It's about like these kids who set off trying to prove that fairies are real, and it's really adorable. So I have her contact information, and if you were ever interested in having her on the show,
Absolutely.
she's,
She sounds perfect. And the
yeah,
point you were making about connecting about experience you had with a publishing company, I encourage authors out there, when you are considering any publisher, agent, contact other writers who've worked with that person. Create those kind of relationships where you're talking with other authors about how that went for you. One of the most satisfying things for me as a publisher was when people would sign with us and they would say, before I signed this, before I reached out to you, I did my homework and I talked to a bunch of other authors who've worked with you, and they said that you work really hard for them and that kind of thing. And that was really great. But I was like, this is also really good professional behavior. Like, reach out, make those connections, and find those people. So I'm glad that you found somebody
yeah.
who's on that side of the business, and understands.
And it can be hard because, you know, to connect with somebody else, you have to go out to like social media and you have to look at like Facebook and things like that. And typically, no, you don't want to just go talking to strangers
Right.
online. But there are communities out there, or writing communities, where you can, even locally, writers that get together maybe like every Tuesday of the month or something.
I
And you
mean,
can
Sarah, let's
find
be
those
honest. You
people.
found
And
somebody online who convinced you to go into a basement in Detroit. So,
to be fair, I had already met her one other
okay,
time.
good. But yes, you're right.
Yes,
You have to be
yes, that
willing to
sounds
put
very
yourself out there a little
sketchy.
bit.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to have those connections. And
Yeah.
so I absolutely agree with you. Being able to make those connections, it's worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a huge difference. And I wanted to make sure people could find you. What's the best place for people to find you about you and your work online?
Yeah, so I'm old school, and Facebook is still my jam. Although I've realized, of course, now it's more like old people on Facebook. Sorry to anyone else out there.
No, I mean it
But I'm
simultaneously
still a
is,
Facebook
and it's where the
person.
most people are. Like,
Yeah, and it's what I'm comfortable with.
yeah.
So I do have a Facebook page. If you look up author Sarah Geddes. I also have Instagram at author Sarah Geddes again. But of course, I don't post as much as I should on Instagram, or I think, is it X is the new Twitter name?
Yeah, yeah. I
I
think it
have
would always
it,
be
and I'll
Twitter to
make
me.
random posts, but I don't engage with my Instagram and the new Twitter as often as I do my Facebook page. So I'd say that that's definitely the one. And I leave it open so that, you can hit the message and send me a private message. I love connecting with readers or stores or libraries,
Yeah.
any organization really. So if you're ever interested in touching base with a children's author, I'm always open to work with just about anybody.
Excellent. Well, and I will post all of those in the show notes. So if you are listening to this on your podcasting app or you're watching it on YouTube and you just scroll down, you'll see all those links, and you can connect as well. So, well, there's some folks I need to thank before we sign off. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to Halizna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com and check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. And as Sarah was saying, as I was saying, reviews really matter. So please go, if you check out Sarah's books and then leave that 5th star, write a little review, tell her that your kids enjoyed them, when you read them to them, because you'll make Sarah's day, and it makes a big difference for authors. And same thing for the show. Click on that little thumbs up. We really appreciate it. It makes a big difference. So Sarah, as folks are going into their week, what's a piece of advice you want to give everybody for this week?
So Monday is the start of the school year for me. And I always have one motto that honestly, I start to say it and my kids can repeat it before I finish. I always tell everyone it's okay to make mistakes as long as we learn from them. So even as an adult, that is what I'm going to tell everybody. It is okay to make mistakes and put yourself out there as long as you learn from any mistakes you do make.
That's great. And I always say a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Sarah and I are still proud of you.
If I take my time.